7 News on your side at 11 starts now.
And tonight, the nation is gripped with anxiety after former President Trump is shot in an apparent assassination attempt. It happened during a rally earlier this evening in Pennsylvania. Trump had just taken the stage at that event when shots rang out, striking the former president's ear. And now, according to officials, the shooter as well as at least one bystander are dead, and the former president is said to be fine. But the gravity of the moment cannot be overstated, as again, officials say they are investigating the incident as a possible assassination attempt. After the shots were fired, the former president rushed off the stage, blood visible running down his face. And after the former president was taken from the stage, Secret Service took down the shooter, as panicked witnesses were left wondering what just happened.
I'm at the Trump rally and somebody just started shooting. What just happened? Oh my God. Go.
And during the aftermath, it was revealed beyond the deaths of the shooter and one bystander, the 2 other bystanders were critically injured, and those who were at the campaign rally cheering on Trump were then forced into action.
I was attending the rally. It seemed initially like firecrackers went off. It was very confusing initially because I knew it was gunfire, but I couldn't quite tell where it was coming from. It sounded like it was coming from behind the bleachers. And the man in the bleachers, kind of to the right of me in the bleachers, took a gunshot wound to the head. Was killed. And another woman, I don't know exactly where she was in the bleachers. I think she was either behind me or to the right of me. She got around she got hit in the forearm and hand, it looked like. Family watched it happen. So they were in the bleachers when he got hit and he went down. I think they were trying to figure out what was going on. They were screaming for help. The body they put a towel over the man's head. The body was removed from the bleachers. Then the police came back, right after and tried to move the family, but they were all in shock. They weren't processing what was going on. The man was he was dead the minute he was hit.
And now, law enforcement sources telling ABC News that the shooter fired at least 8 rounds from an AR-style rifle before he was killed by Secret Service agents responding to those gunshots. All of this as multiple agencies are reacting, and a massive investigation is underway into who the shooter was and how all of this happened. Meanwhile, MPD telling us here in Washington, D.C. that they are increasing security across the city tonight as a precaution. And as the situation is being investigated, the question lingers, how did we get to this point? We are joined now by national correspondent Kayla Gaskins in our Washington bureau. Kayla, already calls from lawmakers for a larger investigation.
Yeah, Scott. So House Speaker Mike Johnson saying the House will conduct, quote, a full investigation of the tragic events, adding they are expected to call the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Secret Service to the Hill for testimony. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer wasted no time announcing his panel will open an investigation into the shooting that's being investigated as an assassination attempt of the former president. Comer says he's already in contact with the Secret Service for a briefing, and he's calling on the Secret Service Director, Kimberly Cheadle, to appear at a hearing on Capitol Hill. Comer said a former invite to Cheadle will be sent very soon. The House Homeland Security Committee has also been in contact with the Secret Service for their own briefing. And on the Senate side, Senator Josh Hawley is calling on their Homeland Security Committee to investigate this as well. The Secret Service is under the Department of Homeland Security. It's led by Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Mayorkas said the department is taking, quote, every possible measure to ensure the safety of the Trump campaign.
And Kayla, you spoke to a rally goer who saw what happened up close, right?
Yeah, Scott. So we talked to a Trump supporter who was sitting just 6 rows from the stage.
Did see a cloud of smoke come right from behind his podium. The kids heard like a subsonic round go over their heads. A sad day for America. Just a really sad day for America. The vibe was, it was open with prayer. People were united. This is America. This is freedom, regardless of your politics.
And Scott, this man was so close that he actually saw the rally goer who passed away, and he said there was just a massive amount of blood.
Kayla Gaskin's on Capitol Hill tonight. Thank you, Kayla. And then, of course, tonight, President Biden also condemning the tragic events. And just within the last hour, the White House saying that President Biden and Trump have spoken. That took place earlier in the evening. Biden saying he is pausing all campaign messaging to supporters in response to the shooting and also working to pull down all of his television ads as quickly as possible. 7 News' Liana Golden's at the White House tonight. Liana, what did the president have to say about this terrible situation?
Yeah, Scott, he had a lot to say. He is not here right now. He's been in Rehoboth Beach, where he spoke about 2 hours after the shooting. He says he is grateful that former President Trump is safe, saying that he's been briefed by several federal agencies, going on to say that he's been in touch with Trump's doctors, even trying to get a hold of Trump himself. Now, he goes on to condemn the gunfire believed to be aimed at his competitor in the upcoming election.
I have tried to get a hold of Donald. He's with his doctors. Apparently he's doing well. I plan on talking to them shortly, I hope, when I get back to the telephone. Look, there's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this.
And Justin, we are learning that the president is on his way back to the White House. He is leaving Rehoboth Beach, expected to be here at about 12:30 in the morning, so just shy of 90 minutes here. He also released a statement saying that he and the First Lady are grateful to the Secret Service for getting former President Trump to safety tonight. For now, reporting live at the White House, I'm Liana Golden, 7 News.
Liana, thank you. Now, after the former president was rushed off the stage and seen by his doctor, he thanked the United States Secret Service and all of law enforcement in Butler, Pennsylvania. Trump says he was shot in the top part of his ear. He also said that he heard that bullet whiz by. On Truth Social, he expressed condolences to the family of the person killed at the rally. He ended his statement by saying, "God bless America." Now, we are still waiting to see if Trump will make any further statements or go before cameras tonight. Scott?
Thank you, Carl. As we continue to learn more about the shooting at Trump's rally, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are expressing their concern for the former president, many taking to social media. Vivek Ramaswamy, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, all sharing the same picture with the message that read, "God bless President Trump," and "grateful to God for protecting him." Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin was one of the first to tweet after the shooting, saying, "Suzanne and I are praying for President Trump, praying for his family, and praying for America." Maryland's Governor Wes Moore also sharing his thoughts about the shooting, writing, "Political violence is never acceptable, ever. This kind of cowardice must be roundly condemned by all Americans." He goes on to say, "Our nation is and must be better than this." Virginia Senator Mark Warner echoing the governor's words, writing, "There is no place for political violence in democracy. I'm monitoring this terrible situation and praying for all those at the Pennsylvania rally." Former President Barack Obama also on X tonight about the moment, stating, "We should all be relieved that former President Trump wasn't seriously hurt and use this moment to recommit ourselves to civility and respect in our politics." Michelle and I are wishing him a quick recovery.
And we continue now with team coverage as the investigation into what happened at that rally in Pennsylvania continues. The incident happening in the middle of a presidential campaign and just days before the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. Well, tonight I had the chance to speak with a political expert from George Washington University for perspective on how this might affect the presidential campaign and future elections.
This is an instance of where were you when this happened type of thing. We saw history play out right before our very eyes. We know the world changed, but we just don't know how it changed quite yet. I mean, information is rolling in as fast as we can collect it. A lot of folks are making guesses, but without all the information, we just know that this was a momentous occasion that's obviously going to have a huge impact on our politics, and especially this election. We just don't know which way the cards are going to break.
There are a number of ways that people can respond and the way that campaigns can respond. What do you expect to see as far as people continue to hit the campaign trail?
On the Democratic side, we're going to see a wholesale reject of this type of response to a party with whom they fundamentally disagree. That political violence is never the answer. It is condemned across the board. It doesn't matter if you're with us or against us. This is not how we do business in America. And you'll see a lot of that on the right too, but it'll also be a lot of more finger pointing from the right to the left of saying, hey, this is what you get with your radical followers. It's what we see in backsliding or failing democracies. It's not what we stand for in the United States.
Talk about that aspect of it and how things have been ratcheted up over the years.
Yeah, over the last couple decades, even we've seen this ratcheting up of violence, sympathizing type of language, right? The way that we even refer to as the other party as traitors or enemy of the people, all of this stuff seeping into our politics dehumanizes the other side. And one of the fatal consequences of this type of language being normalized is that we see an increase of political violence. We saw it at the highest levels today with the attempted assassination of former President Trump.
Now, it may be too early to talk about this, but what kind of impact on the polling, on the voter turnout do you anticipate could come from this?
History suggests that there's going to be a rally around the Trump effect here. We've seen assassination attempts on other presidential candidates, both successful and unsuccessful, and then even presidents with Ronald Reagan and others, where the public sympathizes with, no matter if you disagree with these folks on the issues, there's going to be a segment of the population that just says, man, I sympathize with that. No one should have to face this as they're running for public office. And so we're likely to see a rally behind President Trump, not only with his supporters, but also those that were on the fence.
What kind of scenes do you anticipate at the Republican National Convention? That was just days away.
Yeah.
And now this.
This will be an overarching theme, that we see defiance on the part of the former president. We saw him stand up, raise his fist to the air, which obviously energized his base. There's a story to be told for that he is being literally hunted on his pursuit to take back the White House. That story, that narrative now has video proof behind it. And we're going to see that play out not only in the Republican convention next week, but throughout the rest of this campaign.
All right, thank you for that report, Carl. And for more of that interview, as well as to receive breaking news alerts and the latest updates, you can go to our homepage, WJLA.com.
Hello, and we thank you very much for joining us today as we continue our coverage of the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. If you are just waking up at this hour, here is what we've learned so far. The former president was shot in the ear after a barrage of gunfire broke out at a rally on Saturday in Butler, Pennsylvania. The FBI says that 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, is the assailant. We have new video coming into our newsroom of investigators outside Crooks' residence and the aftermath of the rally. That video shows chairs strewn about, belongings abandoned. Secret Service agents fatally shot Crooks, who attacked from an elevated position outside the rally. One attendee was killed, 2 spectators critically injured. All have been identified as men. Now, the attack was the most serious attempt to assassinate a president or a presidential candidate since Ronald Reagan was shot in 1981. And this morning, we want to walk you through the moments that happened, and we do have reaction from all across the country. The former president had just taken the stage at that rally when the shots rang out, striking his ear. He then ducked and was carried to safety by Secret Service agents with blood streaming down his face. The former president took to Truth Social, saying that he is okay after the attempt on his life. This is some new video that we have gotten from overnight when Trump returned home safely to New Jersey. As for the shooting, panicked witnesses were left wondering what just happened.
I'm at the Trump rally and somebody just started shooting. What just happened? Oh my God. Go.
And those who were at the campaign rally were cheering on Trump, and they say that they sprang into action.
I was attending the rally. It seemed initially like firecrackers went off. It was very confusing initially because I knew it was gunfire, but I couldn't quite tell where it was coming from. It sounded like it was coming from behind the bleachers, and the man in the bleachers, kind of to the right of me in the bleachers, took a gunshot wound to the head. Was killed, and another woman, I don't know exactly where she was in the bleachers. I think she was either behind me or to the right of me. She got around she got hit in the forearm and hand, it looked like. Family watched it happen. So they were in the bleachers when he got hit and he went down. I think they were trying to figure out what was going on. They were screaming for help. The body they put a towel over the man's head. The body was removed from the bleachers. Then the police came back, right after and tried to move the family, but they were all in shock. They weren't processing what was going on. The man was he was dead the minute he was hit.
And now law enforcement sources are telling ABC News that the shooter fired at least 8 rounds from an AR-style rifle before he was killed by Secret Service agents responding to those gunshots. Now, all of this as multiple agencies are responding and a massive investigation is underway into who exactly the shooter was and how it all happened. Meanwhile, MPD tells us that they are increasing security all across the district as a precaution. And as this situation is being investigated, the question lingers, how did we get to this point? This morning, there are calls from lawmakers for a larger investigation and a statement released from the former president saying that he was shot by a bullet that pierced his upper ear. He thanked the Secret Service for their action, and he also gave condolences to the rally attendee who died. Trump's campaign confirmed that the former president is fine and that he was checked out of a local medical facility. Our national correspondent, Kayla Gaskins, has more.
A political rally turned into a crime scene.
This is a big crowd. This is a big, beautiful crowd.
As the former president spoke to his supporters in Butler, Pennsylvania Saturday, gunshots ripped through the air. Donald Trump seen reaching for his ear before dropping to the ground. Secret Service immediately rushing the stage to surround him. Screams heard in the crowd. Go. After a few tense moments, the former president on his feet, blood spattered across his cheek and ear, Trump giving a fist bump as Secret Service whisked him away to the hospital. The Associated Press reporting the shooter is dead, along with one rally attendee. President Biden said he would be speaking to Trump and condemned the violence.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick.
Republican House Majority Leader Steve Scalise was shot in 2017 by a left-wing activist. On Saturday, Scalise writing, "For weeks, Democrat leaders have been fueling ludicrous hysteria that Donald Trump winning re-election would be the end of democracy in America. Clearly, we've seen far-left lunatics act on violent rhetoric in the past. This incendiary rhetoric must stop." We spoke with a Trump supporter who was 6 rows from the stage.
Just a sad day for America. Just a really sad day for America. The vibe was, it was open with prayer. People were united. This is America. This is freedom, regardless of your politics.
And that is Kayla Gaskins reporting. She says that the rally was supposed to be a celebratory moment for Trump as he was heading into the GOP convention, which starts on Monday in Milwaukee. Take a look now at these live photos from outside that arena. The convention will no doubt have a very different feel with much tighter security in the wake of what happened on Saturday. Also, new overnight, President Biden returning to the White House. This is some video of Air Force One at Joint Base Andrews just a few hours ago. The president cutting short his weekend at Rehoboth Beach in Delaware. The brief remarks that he made condemn the shooting and praise law enforcement.
But the bottom line is that the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it.
And as we continue to learn more about what happened, lawmakers on both sides of the political aisle are expressing their concerns for the former president. Many of them taking to social media. Vivek Ramaswamy, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz all sharing the same photo with messages that read, "God bless President Trump and grateful to God for protecting him." Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin was one of the first to make a statement on X after the shooting happened, saying that Suzanne and I are praying for President Trump and we're praying for his family and for America. Maryland Governor Wes Moore also sharing his thoughts about the shooting. He writes, "Political violence is never acceptable, ever. This kind of cowardice must be roundly condemned by all Americans." He goes on to say our nation is and must be better than this. And Virginia Senator Mark Warner echoing the governor's words, writing, "There is no place for political violence in a democracy. I'm monitoring this terrible situation and praying for all of those at the Pennsylvania rally." Now, former President Barack Obama is also sharing his thoughts. He states we should all be relieved that the former President Trump was not seriously hurt and use this moment to recommit ourselves to civility and respect in our politics. Michelle and I are wishing him a quick recovery. Good afternoon. I'm Kelly Lynn as we continue our coverage of the assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. There are breaking developments at this hour. It is being reported that bomb-making material was found at the home of the man accused of shooting the president at a rally, the former president at a rally on Saturday. Let's go now to Michael Yoshida.
Here in Butler, Pennsylvania, we're learning new information about the shooter involved in the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. Law enforcement officials saying the shooter had explosive materials inside his vehicle as well as his home. Behind me, you can see still a heavy police presence, barricades set up as state and federal investigators are on the scene working to figure out a motive for the shooting. Chaos erupting at a campaign rally for former President Donald Trump Saturday evening in Butler, Pennsylvania. Gunshots heard ringing out, the former president dropping to the ground. Moments later, video shows Secret Service agents swarming and lifting up Trump, his face bloodied. Trump then pumping his fist and shouting "fight" to the crowd to show he's okay as he's rushed away. The FBI calling the incident
an assassination attempt against our former president, Donald Trump.
The Secret Service killing the suspected shooter, who the FBI has identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks. Crooks, seen in this video, graduated from Bethel Park High School in Pennsylvania in 2022. Law enforcement officials say the gun used in the shooting, an AR-style weapon, was traced to his father. Law enforcement says the shooter was positioned on a building rooftop just outside the rally. Eyewitnesses describing a bloody and chaotic scene.
Initially, people were, screaming, very upset, people crying, ducking. A lot of ducking. Some Secret Service came over, told everybody to get down.
All we know was shots were fired, and then I jumped over the barrier and put my hand on the guy's head that was refusing to breathe.
A Secret Service spokesperson saying this is an active investigation. President Joe Biden did speak with Trump after the shooting, saying he's grateful he's safe and denounced the violence in Saturday night remarks.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick.
And we do know more about that call between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. A source briefed on the call saying it was short, good, and respectful, and actually the first time the two had interacted directly in several years. As for former President Donald Trump, he did release a statement calling for unity and saying he's looking forward to speaking to the nation in Wisconsin later this week. Of course, that's where the RNC will be starting tomorrow. Live in Butler, Pennsylvania, I'm Michael Yoshida reporting.
And here is more of what the former president is writing about the shooting on social media. Thank you to everyone for your thoughts and prayers yesterday, as it was God alone who prevented the unthinkable from happening. We will fear not, but instead remain resilient in our faith and defiant in the face of wickedness. Our love goes out to the other victims and their families. We pray for the recovery of those who were wounded and hold in our hearts the memory of the citizen who was so horribly killed. In this moment, it is more important than ever that we stand united and show our true character as Americans, remaining strong and determined and not allowing evil to win. I truly love our country and love you all. and look forward to speaking to our great nation this week from Wisconsin. And we want to go live right now to that arena in Wisconsin. You're looking at Milwaukee right now, where the Republican National Convention will begin on Monday. That event runs through Wednesday. Security being reevaluated following Saturday's shooting. Tens of thousands of people are expected to be in attendance, and protests are also expected. We want you to stay with 7 News for live coverage of the Republican National Convention. Meanwhile, the FBI says that 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, did fire the shots at the rally on Saturday. And our colleagues at ABC News obtained a screen capture from a high school graduation ceremony that shows Crooks receiving a diploma. Investigators tell ABC News that they believe that he is the suspect. Law enforcement has also revealed that they found bomb-making materials in the car and the home of Crooks. And today, cameras were on that block where Crooks lived, and investigators were also at the scene where the shooting took place a few dozen miles away. Now, Secret Service agents did fatally shoot Crooks, who attacked from an elevated rooftop position outside the rally. There are many unanswered questions at this point. Number one, how was a gunman able to get a clear shot? And also, what was the motive? House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer pledges a full investigation into the Secret Service and security apparatus around the former president. We're also hearing from people who attended the rally, including a man who was just 30 feet from President Trump when those shots were fired. Texas Agricultural Commissioner Sid Miller attending the rally, and he describes the terrifying moments.
I was on the front row next to the rail, standing up as close as you can get. The whole thing was probably 6-7 seconds tops. I mean, it didn't last very long. They got the president up. Everybody was relieved to see that he was alive and he could stand up. Of course, they had their bodies shielding the president, trying to get him off the stage. Of course, he put up a triumphant, fist pump 2 or 3 times. I think God's hand is in this, obviously. Probably a half inch would have taken the right side of his brain. So he's lucky to be here.
And as we continue to learn more about what happened, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are expressing their concerns for the former president. Vivek Ramaswamy, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, all posting messages on social media that read, "God bless President Trump," and "Grateful to God for protecting him." Democrats and Republicans from the DMV are also issuing their thoughts and prayers, as well as rebuking the violence. Former President Barack Obama wrote on X, "We should all be relieved that former President Trump wasn't seriously hurt, and use this moment to recommit ourselves to civility and respect in our politics." Michelle and I are wishing him a quick recovery. Florida Representative Matt Gaetz was one of the first people to speak to the former president following the assassination attempt. He says that he predicted this would happen.
I've texted my friend, the former president. I've called him. I've talked to some members of his campaign team. They say he's fine, but that he is quite animated about this event, and I can understand why. It was just days ago I was speaking with President Trump, and in almost jest, I said, "They've tried to impeach you. They've tried to convict you. They've tried to imprison you. The only thing they can do now is to try to assassinate you." And we've now witnessed that in the United States of America for the first time in about half a century, and it is not something we ever want to see in our politics. And I hope that this is so thoroughly condemned and rejected that we never have to experience this as a country again.
Maryland Governor Wes Moore shared his thoughts about the shooting, writing, "Political violence is never acceptable, ever. This kind of cowardice must be roundly condemned by all Americans." And he goes on to say that our nation is and must be better than this. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin putting out a statement that reads, "Suzanne and I are praying for President Trump, praying for his family, and praying for America." Local police departments are also on alert. The Metropolitan Police Department is increasing visibility. In a statement, Chief Pamela Smith says she and her department have been briefed and, quote, out of an abundance of caution, MPD has increased police presence across the city. MPD says there are no known threats. The Loudoun County Sheriff's Office praises law enforcement efforts in Pennsylvania following Saturday's shooting. A post on X reading, "We are remaining vigilant to ensure that our Loudoun community remains safe. Any resident who would like additional patrols at their residence may request it." And we want you to stay with WJLA on air and online. You can get the latest details regarding the assassination attempt on the former president on WJLA.com.
7 News on your side at 6:30 starts now.
Good evening, I'm Scott Thuman. Tonight, the investigation continues into the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. Questions looming large about how it could happen in what was supposed to be a secure space, and more into the shooter's plan and motivation. The FBI calling it a potential act of domestic terrorism. And today, political leaders are weighing in on this defining moment in the 2024 presidential campaign and American history. The shocking incident all happening in front of the cameras at a campaign rally that former President Trump was holding in Butler, Pennsylvania Saturday night. Multiple law enforcement agencies are now involved, and we are learning more about 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, the shooter, according to police, including that some sort of explosives were found in his car, according to ABC News, during a search of his property. This after law enforcement officials say the gun used in that shooting, an AR-style weapon, was traced to his father. Crooks graduated from Bethel Park High School back in 2022, and today a former classmate says he was bullied in high school and didn't fit in.
That's what I was saying before, just because like he wasn't like with the clique, so he was always had a, I guess, target on his back.
What do you mean by that?
Just being like bullied.
We are also learning more about the man who was shot and killed at that rally. Corey Comparado, 50 years old and a former Pennsylvania volunteer fire chief. He served as the fire chief for Buffalo's Township in Pennsylvania. Governor Josh Shapiro today called Comparatore a hero.
Corey was an avid supporter of the former president and was so excited to be there last night with him in the community. I asked Corey's wife if it would be okay for me to share that we spoke. She said yes. She also asked that I share with all of you that Corey died a hero. That Corey dove on his family to protect them last night at this rally. Corey was the very best of us.
There were 2 other victims hurt in the crowd, and official reports say they are currently being treated at Allegheny General Hospital in Pittsburgh. So now the question is, how did we get here, and what does this shocking act of violence mean as we move forward with the political campaign? Pressing matters, especially with the Republican National Convention set to get underway tomorrow. The attempted assassination of a former president is now reminding us of the dangers of political violence, an unfortunate part of our history that can't be ignored, and one with some somber moments that are happening right here on the streets of the district. 7 News' Carl Willis is at the alert desk with a look back at some of those moments that stand out. Carl.
Yeah, Scott, and one incident that immediately comes to mind is what happened outside of the Washington Hilton back in 1981. That's where John Hinckley Jr. shot President Ronald Reagan, critically wounding him, his press secretary James Brady, and a Secret Service agent. Hinckley Jr. suffered from severe mental illness that was treated. He was eventually freed under conditional release to live with his mother in Williamsburg, Virginia, and then released from court supervision just a couple of years ago. Now, of course, there have also been more recent incidents like the shooting that injured Republican lawmakers, including Steve Scalise, as they were practicing for a charity baseball game. Scott.
Thank you, Carl. Reaction is also coming in from the White House tonight, where security measures are being enhanced, even as President Biden is speaking out and trying to calm the mood of the country. 7 News' Liana Golden is live at Lafayette Park tonight. Liana, what's the latest on your end?
Yeah, Scott, you can certainly feel that uptick in security all around the White House. We're seeing more Capitol Police officers as well as Metropolitan Police stationed and patrolling this entire area. So let's bring you to some video of what these new measures look like. Here, the Secret Service has expanded the perimeter from 15th to 17th as well as H to Constitution. There is no pedestrian access to the Ellipse, Pennsylvania Avenue, or Lafayette Park right behind me here. This is where we were last night in the hours just after the shooting. It was a much similar scene. We've got a pretty big crowd here as well coming to see all the barriers that are up and also the activity that's happening around here. You can see the fences and the signage going up to alert the public of all of these boundaries. ABC News also reporting that President Biden and former President Trump are urging staffers to avoid coming into their D.C. campaign offices out of an abundance of caution. So let's talk about the president. He spoke earlier this afternoon. He says he is grateful Mr. Trump is doing well and recovering. He also echoes his statement from yesterday, saying even if people debate or disagree, himself and Mr. Trump included, he says they cannot lose sight of who they are as Americans.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence or any violence for that matter. An assassination attempt is contrary to everything we stand for as a nation, everything. It's not who we are as a nation. It's not America. And we cannot allow this to happen. Unity is the most elusive goal of all, but nothing is important than that right now, unity.
The president goes on to say he was briefed by his Homeland Security team, including the director of the FBI, who is leading this investigation, the Attorney General, director of the Secret Service, and his national security advisor. So as this investigation continues when it comes to security, the president says he has tasked the Secret Service with providing Mr. Trump any and all protective measures that they can, calling out all of the resources that they can to keep him as safe as possible at this time. He's also calling for an independent review and investigation of the security in place at last night's rally to assess how he really got to this point. We'll be hearing much more from the president. He will be speaking from his Oval Office at 8 p.m. So we'll have much more on this tonight at 11. For now, reporting live from the White House, Liana Golden, 7 News.
Liana, thank you. Of course, we have seen plenty of political violence here in the district in recent years, including the attack on the Capitol on January 6th of 2021. On that day, the Capitol Police had to protect members of Congress as well as the vice president from an angry mob. 7 News' Brad Bell speaks to one of the ranking officers from that day about the lessons we've learned.
As the former chief of the United States Capitol Police Department, and before that, with a long career at D.C. Police, Steve Sund brings an experienced perspective to what happened at the Trump rally.
Now I've protected, Jimmy Carter, Bush 43, Clinton, Obama, Biden, Trump. So it's been an interesting career.
Sund was a ranking officer with the Capitol Police when in 2017, a gunman opened fire on Republican members of Congress in Alexandria as they practiced for the congressional baseball game. And he was chief on January 6, 2021, when the Capitol was stormed by rioters. He knows what the Secret Service is feeling.
I can tell you from the top all the way down to the agents in the field, they're all taking this extremely seriously. I suspect many of them didn't get a whole lot of sleep last night.
Based on his experience, Sund says there are serious questions to be asked about how the alleged shooter, Thomas Crook, was able to set up as a sniper so close to the former president, especially when the Secret Service counter-sniper teams were in place.
They're up there looking, and they have the high-powered binoculars. They're up there looking specifically for any suspicious activity on rooftops. I've done 5 inaugurations. I can tell you whenever we have a presidential speech or the swearing in of a president on the west front of the Capitol or an inaugural parade, we have people on every single rooftop.
But Sund says as those answers emerge about how the former president was and will be protected, he says the real solution to ending political violence is not up to law enforcement.
We are an extremely divided country. We have to find some way to get beyond this and start acting like adults.
In Washington, Brad Bell, 7 News.
WJLA 24/7 News. On your side at 10. Starts now.
New video tonight of President Trump arriving in Milwaukee. You can see him getting off of the plane This is the first time he has been seen publicly since the attempted assassination last night. Since then, we have been monitoring added security measures across the country. Liana Golden is joining us live now with new details from the White House. Liana.
Yeah, Carl, we're actually hearing from the president tonight from inside the Oval Office, where he spoke with a lot of passion about democracy and how violence is not the answer across the country. We'll hear from him in just a moment. But first, I want to show you, we've been seeing an increase in crowds out here at Lafayette Park, where we've also been seeing an uptick in security. As Carl mentioned, the park here is closed off. It has been since last night and the 24 hours ever since that shooting. We've seen Metropolitan Police and Capitol Police scattered all around this area as they increase their patrols all throughout the day. Let's actually go to some video now that will show you those measures, well as all around the White House here. The Secret Service expanding that perimeter from 15th to 17th Avenue and H2 Constitution. There's also no pedestrian access to the Ellipse or Pennsylvania Avenue or here at the park, as I mentioned. We also stopped by the Republican National Committee headquarters earlier tonight to see if there was some sort of presence out there ahead of tomorrow's convention in Milwaukee, but it is quiet. No activity to report over there. So when it comes to the president's remarks tonight, he said, quote, "It is time to cool it down," referring to the political violence and rhetoric that has been spiking, and he's really setting the scene for what he believes is the answer.
I believe politics ought to be an arena for peaceful debate, to pursue justice, to make decisions guided by the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. We stand for an America not of extremism and fury, but of decency and grace. We debate and disagree. We compare and contrast the character of the candidates, the records, the issues, the agenda, the vision for America. But in America, we resolve our differences at the battle box. You know, that's how we do it, at the battle box, not with bullets.
So when it comes to security, the president says he's tasked the Secret Service with providing former President Trump any and all resources and protective measures to keep him safe. The president is also calling for an independent review of the security at last night's rally to assess what really happened. In the meantime, ABC News is reporting that former President Trump and President Biden are requesting that their staffers do not come into their campaign offices here in D.C. out of an abundance of caution. So we will continue to keep an eye on these security measures overnight and as things evolve into tomorrow when that convention kicks off. For now, reporting live outside the White House, I'm Liana Golden, 7 News.
Liana, thank you. Now, investigators say the alleged shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, shot at former President Trump from a nearby rooftop outside the rally's security perimeter. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer pledges a full investigation into the Secret Service and security apparatus around the former president. Leaders are calling for a transparent investigation. You can see in this map where the gunman was positioned. Several witnesses claim that they saw the suspect climbing to the roof and even alerted law enforcement. But Trump was not removed from the stage before gunfire started. Now, as of right now, despite the assassination attempt against presumptive Republican nominee, the Republican National Convention will go on as planned. The RNC kicks off in Milwaukee tomorrow. Now, the city is on high alert. The Secret Service says there will not be any major changes to their already strict security plan. National correspondent Atrel Nashar reports from Milwaukee.
The Republican National Convention carrying on after an attempt on former President Trump's life. Trump flying from his Bedminster, New Jersey golf club to Milwaukee Sunday afternoon.
I think people are excited about it. I hope it's going to help a bigger turnout for the Republicans, hopefully.
After Saturday's events, the RNC security perimeter will not be expanded, and civilians will still be allowed to carry firearms outside the perimeter.
Our state law allows for the particular right to carry a firearm. We as a city cannot legislate out of that.
Downtown Milwaukee blanketed with law enforcement, especially surrounding Pfizer Forum, where delegates will gather, and the Pfister Hotel, where Trump is staying. But this time feels far from routine. From volunteers to sitting members of Congress, here in Milwaukee, it seems all anyone is talking about is the shock of an assassination attempt on the man they're about to formally nominate as their presidential candidate.
I'm literally beyond words at
what has happened there.
I got a phone call from my brother, and I couldn't believe it. And he said, no, it really happened.
President Biden ordering an independent review of what happened at the Pennsylvania rally and how, and for the findings to be made public. And
I've directed the head of the Secret Service to review all security measures for the Republican National Convention.
An estimated 50,000 delegates, media, law enforcement, and visitors are expected. Even before the Trump rally shooting, the Department of Homeland Security designated the RNC as a Tier 1 event with national and/or international importance that requires extensive federal interagency support. Local and state police aiding federal law enforcement ranging from Secret Service to the Coast Guard and Customs and Border Patrol, monitoring the skies and nearby Lake Michigan, Milwaukee, and Menominee rivers.
Very confident in the security situation here in Milwaukee. This is probably one of the most secure areas on the planet.
Capitol Police is also here to protect sitting members of Congress attending the convention, a necessity. Last year alone, Capitol Police's threat assessment team handled more than 8,000 cases. Wisconsin GOP Chair Brian Schimming says despite the shooting, the convention schedule will go on as planned. That includes the vice presidential nomination on Wednesday and the presidential nomination on Thursday. In Milwaukee, I'm Atrell Nishar.
Less than 24 hours after the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump, churches and places of worship in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia prayed. Congregations praying for protection, comfort, and peace, and they prayed against anger, fear, and tension. 7 News reporter Nick Minock shows us how local faith communities are coming together to provide a message of hope and to grieve with those in pain tonight.
The morning after the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump.
So God, we lift our country up to you.
Churches and places of worship in D.C., Virginia, and Maryland prayed for the former president, the current president, the country, and those who were harmed during the rally in Pennsylvania.
Father, we pray for President Trump. Father, we thank you in your mercy that you spared his life.
And we pray for those who attended the rally yesterday. We just pray that you would comfort them.
A pastor at McLean Bible Church in Fairfax County gently asked his congregation, what was the first thing you thought when you heard the news?
The reason I asked that question is because if your first thought was driven by your politics rather than the actual people that were in danger, then that's probably a sign that something's off in our hearts.
Faith leaders asking all of us to examine what's in our hearts, not only for our own health, but for the health of others and the health of the country.
And if we persist in heartlessness, then we become ruthless. And violent words become violent deeds. And we're on a path in America that I'm asking the Lord, get us off this path.
On Sunday, Rachel Pisani attended Evangel Cathedral in Prince George's County.
They took a moment to stop and say, hey, our country needs prayer. We need God. It's great to watch the faith-based community come together and actually hold prayer vigils and communicate and talk with each other. And you're seeing churches of all faiths, all religions, come together united, which is what our country needs right now.
Nick Minock, 7 News.
A former D.C. officer and former chief of Capitol Police is sharing his thoughts about what happened at the Trump rally last night.
I can tell you from the top, all the way down to the agents in the field, they're all taking this extremely seriously. I suspect many of them didn't get a whole lot of sleep last night.
Hear from the former chief as he shares details about the life of a Secret Service agent.
7 News on your side at 11 starts now.
And good evening to you. I'm Scott Thuman. Tonight, former President Trump forging ahead with his campaign less than 24 hours after being shot in an assassination attempt. Meanwhile, the FBI ramping up its investigation into the shooter, and political leaders from all sides pleading for everyone to lower the temperature after this staggering moment in American history. The shocking event all playing out in front of cameras and a massive crowd at a campaign rally for the former president Saturday night in Butler, Pennsylvania. As new angles and images of the shooting emerge, we're learning more about 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, the shooter. ABC News reporting investigators found some sort of explosives in his car and at this point believe he acted alone. They also say the gun used in the shooting, an AR-style weapon, was traced to his father. Spectators who recorded video of the shooter say they tried to alert police.
And I didn't think nothing of it for a few seconds. And then shortly after that, a guy behind me said that he had seen him. He had a gun. And then when he said that, I moved over a couple feet and I was able to see him perfectly. And I seen he had the gun. And that's when I started to film. My wife ran up to law enforcement, was trying to tell them, you know, where he was, but they couldn't seem to see him because they weren't in the right spot to see him on the roof.
Tonight, we are also learning more about the man who was shot and killed at that rally. Corey Comparator was 50 years old and a former Pennsylvania volunteer fire chief and served as the fire chief for Buffalo Township, Pennsylvania. Governor Josh Shapiro today called him a hero.
Corey was an avid supporter of the former president and was so excited to be there last night with him in the community. I asked Corey's wife if it would be okay for me to share that we spoke. She said yes. She also asked that I share with all of you that Corey died a hero. That Corey dove on his family to protect them last night at this rally. Corey was the very best of us.
There were 2 other victims heard in the crowd, and officials say that now they are currently being treated at Allegheny General Hospital in Pittsburgh. So now the question is, how did we get here, and what does this shocking act of violence mean as we move forward with the political campaign? Pressing matters, especially with the Republican National Convention set to get underway tomorrow. And reaction to this unprecedented situation is also coming from the White House, where security measures are being enhanced, even as President Biden is speaking out and trying to calm the mood of the country. 7 News' Liana Golden is live at Lafayette Park tonight. Liana, what is the latest on your end?
Yeah, Scott, we're hearing from the president tonight from inside the Oval Office, where he spoke with a lot of passion about democracy and how violence is not the answer. We'll hear from him in just a moment. But first, I want to show you, we're here at the park, as you mentioned, but it's actually closed off. It has been for the past 24 hours, and it's actually really quiet out here right now, you guys. This is a big difference from what we've been seeing all day, almost 24 hours straight. Perhaps it's Sunday night, people winding down for the week, but we've seen a lot of increased Metropolitan Police, Capitol Police out here patrolling, stationing in this area. So let's go ahead, bring you to some of what those new protective measures look like all around the White House here in an effort to keep the president safe. The Secret Service expanding that perimeter from 15th to 17th Avenue and H to Constitution. There's no pedestrian access to the Ellipse or Pennsylvania Avenue or the park here, as I mentioned. We also stopped by the Republican National Committee headquarters earlier this evening to see if there was some sort of presence out there ahead of tomorrow's convention in Milwaukee, but it is quiet, no activity to report over there. So when it comes to the president's remarks tonight, he said, quote, "It is time to cool it down," referring to the political violence and rhetoric that has been spiking and is really setting the scene for what he believes is the answer here.
I believe politics ought to be an arena for peaceful debate, to pursue justice, to make decisions guided by the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. We stand for an America, not of extremism and fury, but of decency and grace. We debate and disagree. We compare and contrast the character of the candidates, the records, the issues, the agenda, the vision for America. But in America, we resolve our differences at the battle box. You know, that's how we do it, at the battle box, not with bullets.
When it comes to security, the president says he has tasked the Secret Service with providing former President Trump any and all resources, capability, and protective measures necessary to keep him safe. The president is also calling for an independent review of the security at last night's rally to assess what really happened and how we got here. In the meantime, ABC News is reporting that former President Trump and President Biden are requesting that their staffers do not come in to their D.C. campaign offices just out of an abundance of caution. precaution here. So we will be keeping an eye on these measures out here at the White House and in the surrounding areas tonight and into tomorrow as that convention kicks off. But for now, reporting live outside the White House, I'm Liana Golden, 7 News.
All right, thank you, Liana. So where is the former president now? Donald Trump spent last night at his country club in Bedminster, New Jersey. But tonight, 7 News has learned that he is in Wisconsin, getting ready for the Republican National Convention. Carl Willis has more on that. Carl?
Yeah, Scott, as you mentioned, Trump started his day at his country club in Bedminster, New Jersey, but later his jet was seen landing at Milwaukee's Vigil International Airport right around 6:45 tonight. We see him later coming down the steps, pumping his fist just as he did after being grazed by a gunshot on Saturday. That stance giving us an idea of the tone that he could take later this week at the Republican National Convention. Now, initially, the former president said that he would delay his travel to Wisconsin by 2 days. But in a social media post, he later wrote that he could not allow a shooter or potential assassin to force change to his scheduling or anything else. But he did say in an interview with the Washington Examiner that the shooting has changed his speech for the convention. He said instead of keying in on President Biden, he'll now focus on unity. Now, the president is not expected to speak at the RNC until Thursday night. He's also expected to name his running mate in the coming days, another major step in his presidential campaign. Scott.
Big turn of events. All right, thank you, Carl. Well, the city of Milwaukee is on high alert on this convention eve. And even after the attempted assassination of former President Trump, the Secret Service says there will be no major changes to the already strict security plan there. National correspondent Audra Elnishar tells us more from Milwaukee.
I've directed the head of the Secret Service to review all security measures for the Republican National Convention.
An estimated 50,000 delegates, media, law enforcement, and visitors are expected. Even before the Trump rally shooting, the Department of Homeland Security designated the RNC as a Tier 1 event with national and/or international importance that requires extensive federal interagency support. Local and state police aiding federal law enforcement ranging from Secret Service to the Coast Guard and Customs and Border Patrol, monitoring the skies and nearby Lake Michigan, Milwaukee, and Menominee rivers.
Very confident in the security situation here in Milwaukee. This is probably one of the most secure areas on the planet.
Capitol Police is also here to protect sitting members of Congress attending the convention, a necessity. Last year alone, Capitol Police's threat assessment team handled more than 8,000 cases. Wisconsin GOP Chair Brian Schimming says despite the shooting, the convention schedule will go on as planned. That includes the vice presidential nomination on Wednesday and the presidential nomination on Thursday. In Milwaukee, I'm Audra Elnishar.
Also new tonight, 7 News has a reaction from Virginia Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl-Sears about the assassination attempt on former President Trump. The Lieutenant Governor saying the shocking moment needs to give us all a moment of pause.
Of all the things that you thought could happen in this election cycle, this was not it. I mean, you don't expect this to happen, not in America. I really have no words except to say we have got to stop. We have got to stop the rhetoric. It is killing us. I was heartened to see President Biden come out and say, we don't do these things here. That's exactly what needs to happen. And we need to tone it down because we're the adults in the room. You know, Nick, we're the ones who are supposed to be looking towards the future and making the future brighter for our children and their children's children. So we've got to talk about policy.
Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin and Virginia U.S. Senate candidate Hung Cao are expected to speak at the RNC convention.
Well, right now, former President Trump is in Milwaukee for the Republican National Convention. It starts today. It runs through Thursday. You see here his jet landed at the airport right around 6:45 last night, and he pumped his fist as he walked off the steps of his plane, just as he did after being grazed by a bullet during a campaign rally Saturday in Pennsylvania.
Oh, initially, the former president said he would delay his travel to Wisconsin by 2 days, but in a social media post, he later wrote that he could not allow a shooter or potential assassin to force change to his scheduling or anything else. He told the Washington Examiner he changed his convention speech after the shooting, saying instead of keying in on President Biden, he'll focus on unity.
Well, the former president is expected to speak at the RNC Thursday night. He is also expected to name his running mate in the coming days, another major step in his presidential campaign.
Also, this morning, President Biden is calling on Americans to, quote, lower the temperature in our politics. Biden addressing the nation last night after the assassination attempt on former President Trump. The FBI continues to search for a motive as we're learning new information about a suspected shooter. It's happening as the Republican National Convention starts today as scheduled. ABC's Perry Russum has the latest.
Today, day one of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. The Trump campaign planning to highlight the former president's plan for the economy as the week has taken a dark turn.
I want to speak to you tonight about the need for us to lower the temperature in our politics.
President Biden addressing the nation last night.
You know, the political record in this country has gotten very heated. It's time to cool it down. We all have a responsibility to do that.
Security a top concern at the RNC.
We are confident in these security plans that are in place for this event, and we're ready to go. It's been an 18-month process.
Trump arriving in Wisconsin yesterday, pumping his fist in the air. In a new interview with the New York Post, Trump says, "I want to try to unite our country, but I don't know if that's possible. People are very divided." Investigators say the man suspected of trying to assassinate Trump is Thomas Matthew Crooks, a 20-year-old who worked at a nursing home. Crooks' high school classmates say he was rejected by the rifle team for being such a bad shot, it was considered dangerous.
He was just bullied, he was bullied so much.
Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro says Corey Comparator was killed at the rally, his family posting tributes online. Shapiro says the retired firefighter died protecting his family.
He wouldn't want to be thought of as a hero, but that's definitely how he should be remembered.
The FBI says Crooks was not on their radar and no motive has been found just yet. Right now, investigators are looking at his cell phone to see if he was consuming any misinformation. Perry Russum, ABC News, Milwaukee.
The FBI is ramping up its investigation into the man whose bullet nicked the former president's ear. The attempted assassination has political leaders from all sides pleading for everyone to lower the temperature of political rhetoric after this staggering moment in American history.
Well, this morning we're seeing new angles and images of the shooting and learning more about the shooter, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks. ABC News reports investigators found bomb-making materials in the car he drove to the rally, and at this point believe he acted alone. They also say the gun used in the shooting, an AR-style rifle, was traced to his father. Well, those at the rally who recorded video of the shooter say they tried to alert police.
And I didn't think nothing of it for a few seconds. And then shortly after that, a guy behind me said that he had seen him. He had a gun. And then when he said that, I moved over a couple feet and I was able to see him perfectly, and I seen he had the gun. And that's when I started to film. My wife ran up to law enforcement and was trying to tell them, where he was, but they couldn't seem to see him because they weren't in the right spot to see him on the roof.
Well, we know more this morning about the man shot and killed at the rally. He's on your screen right now. That's Corey Comparator, who is 50 years old and a former volunteer fire chief and served as the fire chief for Buffalo Township. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro spoke about him in Sunday's press conference.
Corey was an avid supporter of the former president and was so excited to be there last night with him in the community. I asked Corey's wife if it would be okay for me to share that we spoke. She said yes. She also asked that I share with all of you that Corey died a hero. That Corey dove on his family to protect them last night at this rally. Corey was the very best of us.
2 other people were wounded. They have been upgraded to stable condition at Allegheny General Hospital in Pittsburgh. And of course, many of us are asking, how did we get here? And what does this shocking act of violence mean as we move forward with the political campaign? Pressing matters, especially with the Republican National Convention set to get underway in just a few hours. We'll have insight from John Gonzalez and WTOP's JJ Green later this morning.
Also this morning, 7 News has reaction from Virginia Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears about the assassination attempt. The Lieutenant Governor said the shocking moment needs to give us all a moment of pause.
Of all the things that you thought could happen in this election cycle, this was not it. I mean, you don't expect this to happen, not in America. I really have no words except to say we have got to stop. We have got to stop the rhetoric. It is killing us. I was heartened to see President Biden come out and say, we don't do these things here. That's exactly what needs to happen. And we need to tone it down because we're the adults in the room. You know, Nick, we're the ones who are supposed to be looking towards the future and making the future brighter for our children and their children's children. So we've got to talk about policy.
Well, Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin and Virginia U.S. Senate candidate Hung Kao are expected to speak at the RNC convention this week.
Your time right now, 4:39, and straight ahead here, authorities are piecing together the profile of Thomas Matthew Crooks, the 20-year-old man they say tried to assassinate former President Donald Trump. And former President Trump and his team are looking for ways to help the victims. So we'll tell you about a GoFundMe campaign and how one top vice presidential contender is lending his support.
Now, your traffic and weather together, always within 7 minutes.
All right, 441 starting off this morning, warm and muggy, but we're dry. It's going to be hot this afternoon as we get into the triple digits, but feels like temperatures around 3 o'clock this afternoon, close to 110 degrees. Sorry, I've got the hiccups, guys. We do have a few evening thunderstorm chances, and again, some of those could be strong to severe. We've got the clear skies overhead right now, but this is the line of showers and storms that I'm tracking through the Midwest. And as we get later into the day, some of those storms could become strong to severe, low end threat for severe weather, but damaging winds are highest risk. But we've got 2 more really hot days, but some cooler weather late week. More on the excessive heat warnings in effect starting at 11 a.m. coming up in my next report.
And we're looking at the roads for you early this morning. So if you're heading out, want to let you know about a couple of things that are going on here. So it's 95 southbound looking good through coming from Howard County as you make your way down towards the Capitol Beltway. So from 32 towards the ICC, that is a quick 7-minute ride. You can see in the cameras right here at 198. Traffic is moving well southbound on that left side of the screen and northbound on the other side there on the right side of the screen there. Now as you head 395 southbound, you can still see we still have the cones out here. So 2 of the right lanes are blocked as you make your way near Washington Boulevard headed towards Glebe Road. Watch for the workers in the area there. We'll keep an eye on it and make sure we catch those guys clearing the cones. That's your traffic watch.
Danielle, thank you for that. 442. Continuing coverage now of the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. Well, a source says the suspect is increasingly looking like a lone wolf. No ties to extremist organizations or other individuals have been found. Among the details emerging about the 20-year-old, former classmates saying he was constantly bullied. ABC's Allison Kosick has more.
This morning, authorities are piecing together a profile of the man suspected of taking aim at former President Trump, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, as they try to find the motive.
Obviously, something triggered this lad, and he committed this horrible act. And he may or may not have talked to anybody.
Crooks is from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, a suburb of Pittsburgh. He was a registered Republican who would have been eligible to vote for the first time this year. He had no known history of mental illness. Crooks worked in a nursing home as a dietary aide and graduated high school in 2022, where students say he was smart, liked computers, and was a loner. Investigators confirming they believe this image shows him in high school in April 2022.
He was always bullied every day. He was just an outcast.
He is starting to appear like he fits a pretty common pattern here of individuals that apparently he was bullied when he was younger. And those types of humiliation experiences, those grievances, When you combine it with an online environment that's going to feed the grievance and suggest that violence might solve the problem, often results in these mass attacks.
While in high school, Crooks was rejected from the rifle team in part for being a bad shot, but did become a member of a local shooting club. Records show he had no military experience. His neighbors stunned that the suspected would-be assassin lived among them.
How sad for his parents.
You just never really know somebody at all anymore, and it's kind of shocking.
Investigators are now trying to search Crooks' phone, looking for any misinformation he may have been consuming and whether it played any role.
The FBI says it's confident Crooks acted alone, but they don't know why he acted at all. He wasn't on their radar, he has no criminal record, and what they've seen so far of his digital history offers no useful clues as to why he would do this. Allison Cossack, ABC News, New York.
Former President Donald Trump's campaign has started a GoFundMe page to raise money for the victims shot during Saturday's rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. As we told you, one person died, 2 others were wounded. The Trump campaign's national finance director organized this GoFundMe page, and Meredith O'Rourke issued a statement that says the former president authorized the account so people can financially help the families of those wounded or killed during the rally. Now, some of Trump's allies and supporters are sharing this GoFundMe link online, including Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, who is a leading contender to be Trump's vice presidential pick.
Well, too, and this morning, former President Donald Trump is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, ahead of the Republican National Convention. You're taking a live look, in fact, at a Fisher Forum this morning, where the convention will take place. Well, Trump touched down at Milwaukee's Mitchell International Airport around 6:45 last night. We see him coming down the steps, pumping his fist, just as he did after being grazed by a gunshot Saturday. Initially, the former president said he would delay his travel to Wisconsin by 2 days, but in a social media post, he later wrote that he could not, quote, allow a shooter or potential assassin to force change to his scheduling or anything else. But he did say in an interview with the Washington Examiner that the shooting has changed his speech for the convention. He said instead of keying in on President Biden, he'll focus on unity. The president is not expected to speak until the RNC, at the RNC until Thursday night. That is Donald Trump, that is. He also is expected to name his running mate in the coming days.
Meanwhile, the FBI is ramping up its investigation into the shooter, and political leaders from all sides are pleading for everyone to lower the temperature after this staggering moment in American history. And we do have a quick warning to viewers this morning. We're about to show you a clip of the shocking events as they unfolded. All of this played out in front of cameras and a massive crowd, as you see here, at a campaign rally for the former president in Butler, Pennsylvania. We're getting new images and angles of that shooting, and we're learning more about 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, who police say is the shooter. Now, ABC News is reporting that investigators found some sort of explosives or bomb-making materials in his car, and at this point they do believe he acted alone. They also say the gun he used in the shooting, an AR-15 style rifle, was traced back to his father. Spectators who recorded video of the shooter say they tried to alert police.
And I didn't think nothing of it for a few seconds. And then shortly after that, a guy behind me said that he had seen him. He had a gun. And then when he said that, I moved over a couple feet and I was able to see him perfectly. And I seen he had the gun. And that's when I started to film. My wife ran up to law enforcement, was trying to tell them, you know, where he was, but they couldn't seem to see him because they weren't in the right spot to see him on the roof.
And we're also learning more about the man who was shot and killed at that rally, Corey Comparatori. He's right there on your screen. He was 50 years old and a former Pennsylvania volunteer fire chief and served as a fire chief for Buffalo Township. There were 2 other victims hurt in the crowd, and official reports say they have been upgraded to stable condition at a hospital in Pittsburgh. Now, investigators say Crooks shot at former President Trump from a nearby rooftop outside the rally's security perimeter. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer pledges a full investigation into the Secret Service and security apparatus around the former president. Leaders are now calling for a transparent investigation. You can see here on this map where the gunman was positioned, and several witnesses claim that they saw the suspect climbing to the rooftop and even alerted local law enforcement. But Trump was not removed from the stage before gunfire started. Meantime, there is reaction from all around the world this morning.
That's right. Lindsay Masters joins us at the alert desk. And what are you seeing?
Yeah, well, you know what? There are so many posts, and like you said, around the world, right? Not just our local leaders, but also leaders abroad. But one of the most heartfelt posts is coming from former President Trump's own daughter, Ivanka. So take a look here. She posted this online. It's a picture of her and her mother, and her as a little girl there. She writes in part, 2 years ago, my mom passed away. I believe she was watching over Dad during the attempt on his life. Eric Trump also posting a family photo, repeating the same sentiments. There's also a focus on the firefighter who died at the rally. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise posting that the victim was a true hero, saying, quote, giving his own life to shield his wife and daughters from evil violence.
Okay, Lindsay, thank you for that. And 7 News also has reaction this morning from Virginia Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears about the assassination attempt. Well, the Lieutenant Governor saying the shocking moment needs to give us all a moment to pause.
Of all the things that you thought could happen in this election cycle, this was not it. I mean, you don't expect this to happen, not in America. I really have no words except to say we have got to stop. We have got to stop the rhetoric. It is killing us. I was heartened to see President Biden come out and say that we don't do these things here. That's exactly what needs to happen. And we need to tone it down because we're the adults in the room. You know, Nick, we're the ones who are supposed to be looking towards the future and making the future brighter for our children and their children's children. So we've got to talk about policy.
Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin and Virginia U.S. Senate candidate Hung Cao are expected to speak during the RNC convention.
Meantime, President Joe Biden is calling on Americans to cool down the political rhetoric after the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. He says political differences should be resolved at the ballot box.
The power to change America should always rest in the hands of the people, not in the hands of a would-be assassin. You know, the path forward through competing visions of the campaign should always be resolved peacefully, not through acts of violence.
Look at what happened. Well, Biden spoke for about 5 minutes from the Oval Office in a primetime address yesterday, using the moment to urge the country to unite as one nation. He is promising a thorough and swift review into the shooting and is asking the public not to make assumptions about the shooter's motives or affiliations.
Meantime, a GoFundMe started by Trump's campaign has raised more than $3 million for victims of the shooting. As we told you, 1 spectator died, 2 others were wounded. The Trump campaign's national finance director organized a GoFundMe page. Meredith O'Rourke issued a statement that says the former president authorized the account so people can financially help the families of those wounded or killed during the rally.
And this morning, security is, of course, top of mind in Wisconsin heading into the RNC, but also here in the nation's capital.
Now, John Gonzalez joins us live. And John, you're tracking some precautionary measures being taken by police, right?
That's right. Right off the bat, we can tell you there is now tall fencing surrounding the White House this morning. And coming up throughout the morning, we're going to show you what else the city is doing. And I also sat down with a former campaign advisor. He says everything will now change after the assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump. And I also spoke with a security expert. He breaks down the Secret Service failures and misses on Saturday night. How did that 20-year-old get on that rooftop with a firearm? All of that coming up right here on 7 News.
All right, John, we'll see you then. And as we continue to gather details about the assassination attempt on former President Trump, you can find all of the breaking details online. Just go to WJLA.com. 5:30 on this Monday. Good morning to you. I'm Robert Burton.
And I'm Adriana Hopkins. We'll have a check of your traffic and weather in just a minute. But first, let's get to our coverage of the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump.
Well, this morning, the country's still coming to grips with the assassination attempt. We now know a bullet hit former President Trump in the ear. One victim and the shooter are dead. 2 others were shot and are still recovering. Now, the FBI believes 20-year-old Thomas Crooks was the shooter, saying he acted alone. The FBI is still searching for a motive as some question the security in place around the event.
And this all comes as the Republican National Convention is set to begin in just a few hours. Here's a live look right now at Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where it's taking place. The former president touched down there last night, but as we mentioned at the top of the hour, he is expected to speak Thursday.
While it's unclear exactly why a 20-year-old gunman fired shots at former President Trump, this will likely change election campaigns as security tightens.
John Gonzalez joins us now live from downtown, where security is visible this morning. And John, this is out of an abundance of caution.
Adriana, that's absolutely right. No credible threat here, but D.C. has increased patrols and security measures throughout the city. And here outside of the White House, we notice tall fencing has now been erected. This as Americans still try to wrap their heads around what happened over the weekend. Now, I spoke with Michael Jones, retired presidential campaign advisor for former President Bill Clinton and Vice President Al Gore. He says this assassination attempt will dramatically and tragically change the way campaigns move forward in the future, including how outdoor rallies will be held, if they will be held at all. Security at these events is already a priority, but now they will take a completely different dynamic.
I think it's going to be quite a hat trick for campaigns and security, law enforcement, both federal and local, to come to a meeting of the minds to allow these kind of events to take place. History speaks for itself. Ronald Reagan, when he was the attempted assassination happened, his points went up 20%. This man, President Trump, he survived this. He showed defiance. You can't help but think that this is going to be used as an opportunity for the campaign to push forward, and it does show strength.
This morning, heightened security is visible around the U.S. Capitol complex and again here where we are live this morning right outside of the White House. Now, the city is urging residents to remain vigilant, report suspicious threats to police. Remember, we're coming off of the NATO summit just last week when the National Guard was brought in and there was already heightened security here in the city. Coming up next hour, we're going to focus on the U.S. Secret Service. What were the fails? What were the misses on Saturday night? Reporting live outside the White House, John Gonzalez, 7 News.
And I'm Lindsay Massis at the Alert Desk. I'm tracking responses from leaders here in our area and around the world. And these are just some of the many, many posts that I am seeing. I am going to start with Virginia's Governor Glenn Youngkin. He posted a lengthy statement on social media that reads in part, "With one voice, we must condemn this evil violence." Maryland's Governor Wes Moore also posted, echoing those same sentiments, saying in part, political violence is never acceptable. Representative Nancy Pelosi also posted, saying in part, "As one whose family has been the victim of political violence, and I know firsthand that political violence of any kind has no place in our society." And world leaders, including Benjamin Netanyahu, they're also responding. Netanyahu is expected to be in D.C. next week.
Lindsay, thank you for the update there. As we continue to gather details about the assassination attempt of former President Trump, you can find all the breaking details online at WJLA.com. Our live team coverage continues at 6 o'clock. Thank you. Former President Donald Trump is in Milwaukee this morning for the Republican National Convention, which kicks off today. And it comes less than 48 hours after surviving the bullet of a would-be assassin. A bullet grazed the president's ear in an attack during a rally outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In a primetime address to the nation Sunday, President Joe Biden urged Americans to reject political violence and recommit themselves to resolving their differences peacefully, saying the upcoming presidential election will be a time of testing in the aftermath of the attempted assassination. So here's everything we know right now about the assassination attempt. The FBI believes 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, here on your screen, of Pennsylvania, was the shooter, saying he acted alone. Authorities say he had bomb-making materials in the car he drove to that rally. The FBI is still searching for a motive, combing through his social media and phone records, and many are questioning the security in place around this event. So here's the park and the location of this shooting, where it all happened. The gunman was only about 400 feet from the stage where the president was speaking, the former president was speaking. In fact, several people claim they saw the shooter climbing the roof and told law enforcement, but Trump was not removed from the stage. One rally attendee was killed, 2 others were hurt. They're recovering at the hospital this morning. Meantime, the shooter's family is cooperating with the investigation. And speaking last night, President Biden says the motive for the shooting is not yet known. In an interview with the New York Post on Sunday, Trump addressed the Secret Service response during the shooting, saying they did a great job. Now, we do have team coverage on the aftermath of this shooting. John Gonzalez is live with increased security here in the DMV area in the wake of this shooting.
Well, we also have WTOP's JJ Green with a threat posed by this increasingly violent political rhetoric, and Lindsay Masters is at the alert desk with reaction to the shooting. Now, we'll also go live to Milwaukee, where security is tight as the Republican National Convention is kicking off today.
Let's start with the stepped-up security here in D.C.
Now, John Gonzalez joins us downtown, where added security is visible this morning. John, this is out of an abundance of caution.
Robert, that's absolutely right. Good morning to you, my friend. No credible threat here in the city, but out of that abundance of caution, D.C. police have increased patrols throughout the district, and there is heightened security protocols. In fact, right outside of the White House here, more fencing has been brought in, and Lafayette Park will be closed for the next couple of days, maybe even longer, as Americans still grapple with what happened over the weekend. This assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump has raised a slew of questions. Just down the street on Capitol Hill, many lawmakers are questioning, and, well, the focus is centered around the U.S. Secret Service. Top leaders in Congress quickly demanding briefings and planning investigations into the incident that left the former president injured. Lawmakers will do a full investigation of the tragedy to determine where there were lapses in security on Saturday evening. I spent time this weekend speaking with security and investigation specialist Jim Orte. Here's how he breaks it down.
This gunman was able to, think about it, park a car, take a firearm out of the trunk, cross some wooded area and a field, and get up onto a rooftop that wasn't covered. It was 148 yards from the actual stage where Donald Trump was giving his speech. Most indoor ranges are 100 yards. For your viewers, this is a replica AR platform. This, with open sights, you could shoot at 100 yards and be accurate. If you add a scope to it, you've increased your accuracy tenfold. Anybody could do that.
This morning, heightened security is visible around the U.S. Capitol complex and here at the White House, and residents are urged to remain vigilant and report any suspicious activity to the police here in downtown D.C. Remember, we're just coming off of the NATO summit with heightened security last week with the National Guard that was in here helping D.C. police. Now, how will the political campaigns change moving forward on the heels of this assassination attempt? I sit down with a former Bill Clinton advisor next hour. Reporting live, John Gonzalez, 7 News.
All right, John, very interesting. Thank you. Our team coverage continues now. JJ Green, national security reporter with our news partners at WTOP, joins us this morning. JJ, I just want to get to the business. Now, Homeland Security has been warning us about the rise of domestic extremism and the potential for political violence for a while now. So what happens next here?
What happens next is we need to pay attention, because they are going to put out alerts. They're going to let people know what they're seeing and what they can tell us about what they're seeing. And it's going to be up to security managers on all levels, from the top where you have presidential candidates and presidents and senators and political people, and all the way down to everyday folks. People are going to be asked to be careful and listen and to be aware. Yesterday, I got some information from some DHS sources saying they're seeing stepped up rhetoric on social media threatening journalists, and politicians. So we're going to have to pay attention to these warnings that we're going to be getting.
Well, speaking of politicians, the RNC makes me a little nervous because you have so many politicians in one location. From what you know, was security totally revamped there in Milwaukee?
No, there wasn't enough time to do that. That kind of thing takes months to do, but it was already a good plan. And in fact, what needed to be done was some things need to be tightened up. And this is what I've been told has been happening. Also, the Secret Service and all of its law enforcement partners, I'm certain, have reviewed plans on communications and how to interoperability and all of that, how to do that and to make sure that that works. So the plan didn't have to be redone, but it certainly had to be tightened up. And I'm certain as the sun rises over Milwaukee, it will be tight.
Now, people have really been critical of the Secret Service after this assassination attempt. There's a lot of calls for looking into the Secret Service and how this was handled. What are you hearing about the Secret Service's reactions and response in the aftermath of this?
Well, they're upset, and notably upset, and for good reason, because just last week, and I was a part of this, and folks from your team as well, the NATO summit, you had to go through lots of hoops to get anywhere, to do anything. You know, there are people checking and watching every step of the way when you're in the perimeter. And not only did the Secret Service pull that off for 32 heads of state or leaders from 32 countries, but they did that in addition to what they do on a daily basis for President Biden, for former President Trump, former President Obama, former President Clinton, their families, all of the people they protect on a daily basis. This was one situation that got out of hand, got away from them, but all it takes is one to ruin a reputation. So they're under scrutiny. They're taking it well, I'm told, but there is going to be an investigation, and there probably will be some changes.
JJ Green, as always, thank you for your expertise and your insight. Until next time.
Thank you.
And of course, we've seen plenty of political violence here in the district in recent years, including the January 6th attack on the Capitol. You're looking at those images here. Now, on that day, Capitol Police had to protect members of Congress as well as the vice president from an angry mob. Well, 7 News Maryland Bureau Chief Brad Bell speaks to one of the ranking officers from that day about the lessons we've learned.
I can tell you from the top all the way down to the agents in the field, they're all taking this extremely seriously. I suspect many of them didn't get a whole lot of sleep last night.
We'll hear more from the former chief as he shares details about the life of a Secret Service agent. Well, just click this story on our homepage.
Faith-based communities in our area are reacting to the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. During Sunday services, people prayed for the former president, the current president, the country, and those who were harmed during the rally in Pennsylvania.
We pray for President Trump. Father, we thank you in your mercy that you spared his life.
You're seeing churches of all faiths, all religions come together united, which is what our country needs right now.
Take a look at what happened. Well, after the assassination attempt, former President Trump issued a statement. He said it was God alone who prevented the unthinkable from happening.
I'm at the alert desk. I am tracking posts online from leaders here and abroad, but one of the most heartfelt posts is coming from former President Trump's daughter, Ivanka. So she posted this photo of her mother and herself as a little girl and writes in part, 2 years ago, my mom passed away. I believe she was watching over Dad during the attempt on his life. Eric Trump also posting a family photo, repeating those same sentiments. There's also a focus on the firefighter who died at the rally. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise posting that the victim was a true hero, saying, quote, giving his own life to shield his wife and daughters from evil violence.
Lindsay, thank you for that. Former President Trump's campaign started a GoFundMe page to raise money for the victim shot during Saturday's rally. You see it here on your screen. Conservative groups, including the Heritage Foundation, and GOP backers like Kid Rock and UFC President Dana White have donated. So has Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, who is a leading contender to be Trump's vice presidential pick. Well, this GoFundMe has already raised more than $3 million. There's a separate GoFundMe in support of Corey Cooperatore's daughter. Well, he's the firefighter who died at the rally. Now, that page has raised more than $800,000. Now, our team coverage on this continues at 6:30. We'll be joined live by St. Clair National correspondent Christine Frizzell for the latest on the shooting and its impact on the Republican National Convention, which gets underway today.
To the latest on the assassination attempt of Donald Trump. And today, the Secret Service said it is changing the former president's security plan. A source tells ABC News that includes adding more officers to protect Mr. Trump. And it comes as the Republican National Convention starts today in Milwaukee. Trump still has to announce his running mate. That could happen as early as today. ABC's Perry Russum is in Milwaukee.
Day one of the Republican National Convention and the scheduled focus on Trump's economic plan is overshadowed by this weekend's assassination attempt. Trump says he is reworking his convention speech, telling the Washington Examiner, the convention is a chance to bring the country together. I was given that chance. Security at the RNC is a top concern.
The designation that we have here in the city of Milwaukee for this convention is a national special security event. It is the highest designation.
President Biden addressing the nation last night, asking Americans to lower the political temperature.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence, or for any violence ever.
Investigators say the man suspected of trying to assassinate Trump at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania Saturday is Thomas Matthew Crooks, a 20-year-old who worked at a nursing home. He was a registered Republican with no known history of mental illness and no criminal history. The FBI says it's confident Crooks acted alone. The Butler County Sheriff telling ABC News that moments before the shooting, a local police officer confronted Crooks on the roof, but Crooks quickly turned and aimed his gun at the officer, forcing him to retreat. He's got a gun! The Secret Service is facing major questions as to how the shooter was able to get so close to Trump.
A direct line of sight like that to the former president should not occur, and we are going to really study the event independently and make recommendations.
The same agency is in charge of protecting the RNC. The Secret Service says they've been planning for this event for more than a year.
We're not anticipating any changes to our operational security plans for this event.
One person was killed at Trump's rally. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro identifying him as Corey Cooperatore's, his family posting tributes online. Shapiro says the firefighter died protecting his family. We are still waiting to see who Trump is going to pick as his running mate. We're being told it is down to 3 people, Senator J.D. Vance, Senator Marco Rubio, and the governor of North Dakota, Doug Burgum. A decision could be made as early as today. Perry Russum, ABC News, Milwaukee.
And while it is not clear exactly why that 20-year-old gunman fired shots at former President Trump, this will likely change election campaigns as security tightens. Our John Gonzalez is in the district where added security is already visible out of an abundance of caution.
No credible threat here in the district, but out of an abundance of caution in the heels of the assassination attempt, D.C. police have increased patrols and heightened security around the White House here. More fencing has been brought in. Lafayette Park is closed. Now, the assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump has raised a slew of questions. Just down the street on Capitol Hill, many of those questions are centered around the U.S. Secret Service. Lawmakers will do a full investigation of the tragedy to determine where there were lapses in security. I spent time this weekend speaking with security and investigation specialist Jim Orte. Here's how he breaks it down.
This gunman was able to, think about it, park a car, take a firearm out of the trunk, cross some wooded area and a field and get up onto a rooftop that wasn't covered. It was 148 yards from the actual stage where Donald Trump was giving his speech. Most indoor ranges are 100 yards. For your viewers, this is a replica AR platform. This, with open sights, you could shoot at 100 yards and be accurate. If you add a scope to it, you've increased your accuracy tenfold. Anybody could do that.
And remember, we're just coming off of the NATO summit when there was already heightened security here in the district with the National Guard. Now, visibly, we can see heightened security at the U.S. Capitol complex and here at the White House. And residents are urged to remain vigilant and report any suspicious activity to the police. Outside the White House, John Gonzalez, 7 News.
All right, John, thank you. And former President Donald Trump's campaign has started a GoFundMe page to raise money for the victims shot during Saturday's rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. And it was organized by the Trump campaign's national finance director. Meredith O'Rourke issued a statement that says the former president authorized the account so people can financially help the families of those wounded or killed during the rally. And at last check, more than $2 million has been donated. Well, coming up on 7 News at noon. Next, we are live talking with a political science expert about his thoughts on whether the assassination attempt of former President Trump could increase the threat of more political violence. Well, long before the assassination attempt of former President Trump, there had already been a very deep political divide in this country. And now there's concern this attack could lead to more political violence in the months leading up to the November election. And joining us now is Dr. Matthew Dallek. He is a professor for the Graduate School of Political Management at George Washington University. He is also author of the book Birchers: How the John Birch Society Radicalized the American Right. Professor, thank you so much for joining us here on 7 News.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And first, we just want to get your reaction to the events that we saw take place this weekend and how an attempt like this could possibly lead to more incidents of violence.
Yeah, well, I think like everybody else, it wasn't just shocking, but it was horrific. I mean, to actually watch the attack in almost real time, I think it's traumatic. It's traumatic. And, you can kind of get why people, I was not alive then, but why people remember where they were when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. In terms of the likelihood of more violence, it's pretty unusual if one violent act, especially a violent presidential assassination attempt, quells violence, right? Usually it leads to more violence. I mean, violence typically kind of begets more anger, more fury, a kind of hate of the other side. And we have, over the past decade in the United States, I think, seen both an uptick in political violence and also an uptick in the number of Americans who support political violence under certain circumstances. So this really horrific attempt on Trump's life, I think, is unlikely to kind of stem that tide and more likely to accelerate it.
And Professor, you mentioned JFK. How does this event compare to assassination attempts of the past, specifically the current political climate? How does that compare to climates of the past that fostered this type of violence?
Well, I definitely think about the 1960s when I saw the attack, and partly JFK, but of course, really the two other famous assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy in 1968, and those occurred in a much larger climate of violence. There was violence. The U.S. war in Vietnam, of course, was not just violent in Vietnam, but was ripping the country apart. There was violence, of course, at the 1968 political convention. And so it does feel to me like, even though the issues are totally different now, was the case then, the center is not really holding. And that, I think, is a sort of larger concern, that, the extremists, if you will, are in the saddle and they are driving events. And that, I think, is a very worrisome dynamic for the United States and any kind of democracy. And again, that's another reason why it's hard to see how this failed assassination attempt is going to lead to less violence.
And Professor, the news of this spread instantly, so quick. That's just the era that we're living in, this instant public response on social media. We also saw, though, the fast response from lawmakers condemning what had happened, speaking out. Would you say, or how would you say the response from lawmakers on both sides could impact, maybe even could calm the possibility of future violent incidents?
Well, part of the problem, of course, is political rhetoric that often slides into a dehumanization of the other side, of the enemy. And I think more of it, a lot more of it, frankly, has over the past 7, 8, 9 years been coming from the right, from the Donald Trump-led right. We saw this most horribly on January 6th, right? And the attack on the Capitol when Trump told a mob basically to fight like hell or they wouldn't have a country anymore. But of course, there was, this happens on the left too, right? The attack on the congressional Republicans at the baseball field by a supporter of Bernie Sanders. So I think that's why in part Biden and many others, President Biden and many others have been calling for a lowering of the temperature. And it's very hard to do though, because the rhetoric and then the ideas and the challenges that the country faces behind the rhetoric are just so deep, so entrenched, and people are feeling so angry.
And Professor, you know, we've seen this phrase, especially over the last few days on social media, in the news, when violence wins, democracy loses. What needs to happen for our country to heal?
Oh God, that's such a great question. I think that it's going to take some time and it's going to take a lot of work by elected officials, by civic society, nonprofit groups, the judicial system, the kind of really the institutions of American democracy and the individuals who help to lead it to try to lead the country toward that path. That certainly does not happen overnight, but in 1968, there was a commission to study the causes and also the prevention of political violence. Whether it succeeded, I think, is an open question. But certainly the push for more center, whether it's center right or center left, less extreme, less violent rhetorical words, I think all those things will help slowly, hopefully, push the country toward a more civil and nonviolent place.
Where we want to go, that is the goal. Dr. Matt Dolick, author and professor for the Graduate School of Political Management over at George Washington University. Thank you so much for joining us live here, Professor, on 7 News.
Thanks so much for having me.